Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter. I'm welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video, and we're talking about the top 10 heavyweight champions of boxing. Boxing is known as the sweet science, and I feel that, it doesn't get mentioned enough on most channels, but, some channels will go the extra mile and do it. But the fact of the matter is that boxing is huge, and what you have to do is just do well in it. So anyway, these are the top 10 heavyweight champions. I know I did top 10 boxing champions, but top 10 boxers of all time. And that includes like the middleweights and lightweights because, Manny Pacquiao was on that list. And, he's not a heavyweight by any stretch. Now, the heavyweight division is one of the most eye-watering divisions of boxing ever. And there have been plenty of great heavyweight champions and some that did not make this list. For instance, Evander the Real Deal Holyfield was an honorable mention, winning a four-time heavyweight champion. Of course, you have the WBA, the WBC, the IBO, and the IBF, and like you have different div- divisions of heavyweight boxing, like belts. But anyway, Holyfield would beat Bo Tyson and Lennox Lewis. Well, it was big fights. Holyfield Bo would be mostly in the 90s, and that was the Fan Man fight in 93. Holyfield Tyson in 91, and Holyfield Lennox Lewis. Well, actually, no, sorry. Holyfield Tyson was supposed to be 91, but Tyson got in trouble for what he did to Desiree Washington, and then, the bite fight, and then Lennox Lewis. Sonny Liston also as an honorable mention. He had an intimidating presence and basically was a thug in everyone's life. He did have some organized crime ties, and that kind of cost him dearly. Vladimir Klitschko, like Vladimir, was a heavyweight champion, but Vladimir had his reign for being a decade and had technical prowess. Gene Tunney was an intelligent and elusive fighter. He beat Jack Dempsey twice to retain the heavyweight belt. And of course, the long count, 1927, was the last major fight for Jack Dempsey, and Tunney beat him. Because Jack Dempsey forgot the rules that they set in 1927 that you had to be in a neutral corner and all that. Well, the knocked out boxer tried to beat the 10 count. Anyway, here's the list. Number 10 is Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes is often underrated, but he was heavyweight champion from 1978 to 1985. It was amazing to see that way. Successfully defending his title 20 times. He had good jab, he had ring intelligence, and he had toughness. He would beat up people like Ken Norton, Ernie Shavers, Jerry Cooney, and actually fought Muhammad Ali in 1980, which was kind of seen as a joke, if you will. But in October 1980, Ali would be coming back to try to win the title for the fourth time to reclaim the belt. But of course, that was when Larry Holmes beat up Ali, who was in the early stages of his Parkinson's. But yeah, Larry Holmes was amazing. He even was on The Simpsons in a cameo at a hockey game. Number 9 is Smoking Joe Frazier. Speaking of boxers who were on The Simpsons, Joe Frazier was there. And he had a bigger role than Mr. Holmes. Joe Frazier presented Homer with the Monty Burns Lifetime Achievement Award for excellence in the field of excellence. Basically, something to give Homer so that Homer wouldn't sue the company for his infertility. Nevertheless, Smoking Joe Frazier is known for his trilogy with Muhammad Ali. 1971, when he beat Ali by unanimous decision. Can't remember their second fight because I know 75 was the Thrilla in Manila. They must have had another fight. I think it was 73. Did they have a fight or something? I can't remember the second fight, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Smoking Joe Frazier could beat Ali, and he did. He had relentless pressure, he was a thunderous left hook, and indomitable spirit. He won the 1968, was it 68 gold medal or was it 64? Well, he won the heavyweight gold medal. I think it was 68. His legacy is defined by hard courage and rivalry, and he was pretty good and all that. Of course, Frazier would be known as a punching bag for George Foreman in that fight in Jamaica. Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. But he still had some good fights, you know. Too bad his son Marvis was basically mincemeat for Mike Tyson. And speaking of Mike Tyson, that's number 8 is Mike Tyson. Few champions captured the world's imagination like Mike Tyson. He started boxing in 1985, the year of my birth, professionally, of course, and was intimidating. He had knockout power, and by the age of 20 in 1986, he was rising up the rankings and would challenge 3 people for heavyweight belts. Of course, the three divisions, well, in the heavyweight, WBA, WBC, and IBF, I think, or the WBO, whatever. I know he beat Trevor Burbick. I can't remember. I think it was Tony Tubbs and Bone Crusher Smith. Can't remember off the top of my head. But nevertheless, he was 20 years old. He was the youngest heavyweight champion around when most people were in college. Anyway, he has devastating speed, power, and intimidation. He would make massive knockouts. He knocked down the former champion Trevor Burbick, who is part Canadian, by the way. He knocked down Michael Spinks. He took down Marvis Frazier in like 30 seconds. Anyway, the early part of his career was great, but once 1990 hit, he was a different boxer. When Cus D'Amato, his trainer, longtime friend, actually passed away, and he was the guy who molded Mike Tyson into this nice guy instead of the street bug and the Catskills. Mike Tyson lost his way and basically hung out with the wrong crowd and all that. He also hung out with a certain orange-haired president, but that's not to say why he was. Well, he would have. Like Trump wanted to be Tyson's manager, but was officially told no. Nevertheless, Tyson was big, even at his own video game, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! It was a big hit in Japan and a big hit in the United States for Nintendo. My brother would love to beat that game. So anyway, Mike Tyson was big, but then he lost in 1990 to Buster Douglas, a 42-1 underdog, but he had heart. I mean, Buster lost his mom, who was a big influence in his life. You're doing it for your parents. And Mike Tyson just basically treated this fight as a nothing. And also because of the Vegas refused to put it in there. It had to be in Tokyo. Then Tyson went to prison for 4 years, and then he started coming back up the list. But unfortunately, he was remembered for biting off Evander Holyfield's ear and basically, well, a piece of it, and losing touch. Number 7 is a Canadian champion. And no, it's not Sam Langford. I would love to be. But yeah, number 7 is Lennox Lewis. Lennox was a superb boxer with imposing size and reach. Lennox unified the heavyweight division in the late 90s and 2000s. He was tall, he was dark, he was handsome in a sense. He unified it. Lennox went up the rankings. Well, in 1981, he moved from Britain to Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, and attended Eastwood, or was it KCI? But yeah, Eastwood. And, he was good and all that. Lennox would represent Canada at the Olympics in 1988, beating Riddick Bowe, which I mentioned as an honorable mention, although people said Bowe should not have lost that fight. People thought it was biased. Unfortunately, that was the same day as Roy Jones Jr. being robbed in his Olympic gold medal fight. That was a robbery. Anyway, Lennox would represent Canada and then turned professional and went back to his British roots. Kind of would have pissed me off if I was in my 20s, but I wasn't. Anyway, he would fight Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, and Vitaly Klitschko and actually beat them, which was amazing. Unfortunately, like Mike Tyson, Lennox would lose to a massive outsider by the name of Hasim Rothman. Lost his belt, but Lennox regained it back. He had power, skill, and intelligence. Boxing's elite. He did at times remember his Canadian upbringing, but still, kind of the one we would have loved to have. Number 6 is George Foreman, big George Foreman, who died, I think last year, was it? Anyway, he had 2 career eras. His initial rise as a fearsome puncher and basically idolizing Sonny Liston, and the astonishing comeback in the late 80s. Foreman beat Joe Frazier in Jamaica and was one of the most intimidating fighters ever. Of course, Foreman would lose to Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle. He would fight a few times, and in Puerto Rico, he actually had a awakening after nearly dying in the ring when the spiritual world taught him about the Bible and all that. So Foreman became an ordained minister in Houston, and he would somehow in 1987 decide to go back to the ring. People scoffed at him. He actually had a title fight against Evander Holyfield in 1991, but lost. But it was a close loss, too. By 94, he shocked everyone by beating, what's his face? Beat Michael Moore for the heavyweight belt November 4th, 1994, which was amazing. Foreman managed to do it. He had a decade-long retirement, but he stunned Michael Moore. And then I can't remember if it was Jim Lampley who said this. I think it was Jim Lampley who said, it happened. It happened. And at 45 years old, I'm 40 by comparison right now, George Foreman was the heavyweight champion of the world. And basically everyone loved him for his turnaround. Number 5 is Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was amazing as champion in the 1920s. And this was the Roaring Twenties after the World War I, in which prosperity happened before the Great Depression. He had ferocious aggression, knockout power, and electrified audiences and popularized boxing worldwide. He would beat many fighters of different backgrounds. Luis Firpo from Argentina, Gene Tunney from the United States, for example. No, sorry, Jess Willard, because he didn't beat Tunney, and Georges Carpentier from France. In fact, Dempsey's match against Carpentier in 1921 generated the first $1 million boxing gate. And this is 1921 bucks. His fights would set attendance and revenue records. I can't remember what state. Was it? I think it was in Nevada. Or I can't remember the location. Jack Dempsey had a fight in the 1920s, and this town went bankrupt building a big stadium, and not many people came. Nevertheless, Jack Dempsey did lose the belt to Gene Tunney. And then, of course, the next fight was the long count fight, and he basically retired. But yeah, he's still legend. Number 4 is Jack Johnson. A little controversial because of the time of it. But anyway, Jack Johnson was the first African American heavyweight champion in 1908, beating Tommy Burns of Canada for the belt. For 7 years, he would reign as heavyweight champion. He shattered racial barriers and showcased extraordinary defensive skills and ring intelligence. He would beat Tommy Burns. He would beat James Jeffries, who people called the Great White Hope, because they had hoped that Jeffries would beat up Jack Johnson for the belt because, America did not want a black athlete winning their heavyweight championship. And it was like, that's just pure big. But remember, racial tensions were a whole lot worse 100 plus years ago. So nevertheless, they tried James Jeffries. They tried it. A lot of white boxers. Jess Willard did beat Jack Johnson, but a lot of people said Johnson had basically thrown the fight. But I think he kind of threw it because he knew that he was in deep, deep trouble. Jack Johnson didn't help matters by flaunting women and clothing and all that. But yeah, Jack Johnson was just basically hated because of his race and all that. But he was a true trailblazer in sports and society, doing everything he could to help the African American community. But it worked and it didn't work. Number 3 is Rocky Marciano. Rocky actually is the only heavyweight champion to retire undefeated. Some say Floyd Mayweather retired undefeated, and he has more than 49 wins. Yes, but he's not a heavyweight. Floyd Mayweather never fought heavyweight. So Rocky Marciano is the only heavyweight champion to retire unscathed. He was 49-0 with 43 KOs. The Brockton Buster, as they call him. He was critiqued for the quality of his opponents, but he had relentless style, durability, and punching power. He would beat the great Joe Louis. He would beat Jersey Joe Wilcott and Ezra Charles, for example. At 49-0 with 43 KOs, guy was a legend. Unfortunately, he lost his life a few years later in a plane crash in Kansas. But anyway, Rocky did what he could for the boxing world in the 1940s, and you know, he had a lot of class and all that. Number two is Joe Louis. Joe Louis, the blue blazer, no, the round bomber. He actually reigned as heavyweight champion 12 years, from 1937 to 1949. Nobody had done that. Not even number one, not even Rocky, not even Evander Holyfield or George Foreman. 25 times he defended the title before finally losing. His precise punching and technical mastery set him apart, and he had a cultural impact as an African American champion. It was a racially divided era still in the 1930s. A little better, but not completely great, too. And people actually respected him as an African American champion, unlike Jack Johnson. Nevertheless, Joe Louis would fight Max Schmeling for the heavyweight belt in 1938 and KO'd him, knocking out Germany and knocking out, the fact that a white fighter could be superior. And Joe Louis was the symbol of the war years for boxing and for America. I can't remember if he fought in World War II. I don't think so, but nevertheless, he did everyone proud, and he was a good boxer too. And finally, number one is, well, he's known as the greatest, so obviously he's number one. It's Muhammad Ali, aka Cassius Clay. He had his wit, activism, and courage. He was recruited, well, he went to boxing in Louisville to try to get out of crime and all that. He won the 1960 gold medal in Rome. Unfortunately, though, even though he got a gold medal and in the Olympics, that's a big deal, he actually was refused service at a large counter in 1961, and then, angry over the racial problems in Kentucky, he threw his gold medal into the Kentucky River. Nevertheless, Ali proved himself. He was fine as Cassius Clay. He beat Sonny Liston in 7 rounds when Liston refused to fight in the 7th round. And it says, I shook up the world. I'm a bad man. I shook up the world. And then Ali would beat Sonny Liston in the rematch in Lewiston, Maine, in front of only like 2,500 people, and, beat him in the first round with that phantom punch and all that. Some said Sonny Liston threw that fight. Nevertheless, Ali was great and all that. He had dazzling speed, footwork, and tactical brilliance. Most people lose their belts on a technicality, but Ali's was the worst. Basically, what ended up happening was that he was drafted. Well, he was drafted in the Vietnam War and stuff. A lot of people debate what Ali's role would have been. Maybe it would have been a ceremonial role, but I don't think it was, because then Ali would have accepted it. But Ali refused to be drafted, and said he had no qualms with being calm. Worst part was that the Americans basically were not too happy with what happened, stripped him of his title, and he refused, and he couldn't fight in America for years. He had to come to Canada, like in Toronto, to face George Chuvalo and all that. But at least still kept winning fights and all that. And although he lost to Joe Frazier in 1971, a few years later, he managed to beat George Foreman in the Rumble of the Jungle in 1974, October 30th, in Kinshasa. George Foreman was basically Sonny Liston light, if you will, and Ali decided to use his famous rope-a-dope technique for the first time, making Foreman wear himself out by punching out Ali, and then he would be tired. It worked in the 8th round, as Ali won and became only the second fighter to regain the heavyweight belt after losing it, after Floyd Patterson. So that's what happened. And Ali would carry the belt to 1978, when a young Leon Spinks, in his 8th professional fight, beat Ali somehow, and then Ali came back and beat Leon Spinks to regain the belt. But his acumen had basically been worn thin, and he lost again. And then, of course, Larry Holmes fought a pre-Parkinson's Ali in 1980, and then Ali fought Burbick in 1981, finally ending it. But he was known for his activism and all that in the 90s and 2000s and all that. He made a famous speech in front of the people at the Sky Dome in 2004 for a special event, and ended with, I love you, Canada. But unfortunately, Parkinson's really took Ali to the forefront of being, dead. But anyway, Ali is still the greatest. And that's Oh, I gotta say. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. A dude.